that's okay. Of our program brought to us from the Smathers Library Special Collections Department. Um, and today, um, our speaker, Martha Kapelewski, uh, is going to bring uh, her the library collection of material from the Sears Roebuck stores in Cuba in that period from about 1920 until mid-50s.
Ron, hold up the mic up just a little bit.
Okay, it's a collection of photos, scrapbooks, and we can really see the history, I think, of Cuba in that time through this material. So we're really happy to welcome Martha, and Boyd Murphy is the coordinator from Special Collections, and he'll give you some background on our speaker today, and then we'll begin.
Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's my pleasure to introduce Martha this morning. Martha Kapelewski is the bilingual associate processing archivist at the Special and Area Studies Collections, Smathers Library, University of Florida. Her interests include incunabula. I was worried I wouldn't get through with that word. Incunabula, books, early printing history of Spanish books and their migration to the colonies, Jesuit books and text in the colonies, early printed maps, and philosophy. She holds undergraduate degrees in communications and philosophy, an MLIS in library and information science, an MA in philosophy, a graduate certificate in archives and special collections, and she is currently on ABD status on a philosophy doctorate at UF. Her research project currently focuses on scribes and their signs, small rubric signatures chosen and designed by individual scribes of colonial Mexico, Cuba, and South America. She's working to create a database of scribes, including tracking their location and movement across the colonies. That sounds fascinating. Her talk today is Sears in Cuba, the early years of Sears Roebuck and Company's first steps outside the United States as it grew its interest in Cuba. Without further ado, Martha, stage is yours.
Hope you like it. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so. Okay. And then can you hear me okay? Thank you. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I'm not a very technical person. I'm a book person. Even the mic is scaring me a little bit. Anyway, so my presentation is about the Ken Murdoch Sears Cuba album. And this is an album that I process, and right now it lives with a collection that we call 20th Century Cuban Documents collection. And the album it came to us in a binder, and I process it, and it's in folders, but it's complete. And one of the things that we have to make sure is that if we receive an album like this, we keep it in its original order. So the photographs may be out of sequence, but for this presentation, I followed the sequence, but I don't have all the photographs because it's about 60. And one of the great things in this collection that we received is that the album, it was given to Mr. Murdoch, who he's right here. It contains a series of newsletters that the employees in the Cuba store did, and I want to show some of that at the end. So Okay, thank you. The story of Sears begins in 1886 in Minnesota when train station employee Richard Sears bought a shipment of watches meant for a local jeweler. And the jeweler refused to accept the shipment. He didn't want to pay. And Richard bought it and he sold the watches at a profit. So that was the beginning of his merchandising career. Eventually, he moved to Chicago and he partnered with Alva C. Rebuck, a watch repair expert. So from watches, they move on to create the Sears catalog, primarily at first meant to sell farmers' wares and equipment. And that's how Sears became Sears Roebuck. In 1899, they partnered with Julius Rosenwald, a clothing manufacturer. And it was then that the Sears catalog began to expand to sell many and diverse products. In 1924, Sears hired General Robert E. Wood, and in 1926, after Julius Rosenwald became the president of the company, Sears, under the guidance of General Wood, opened its first store in Chicago. By 1940, Sears had stores across America, Canada, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. In 1924, the first Cuban store was opened in Havana, Cuba. Actually, that in 1942. So that's the album documents the early years of Sears, and documents the first steps as Sears grew outside the United States, and it had particular interest in Cuba. The album reveals a harmonious working relationship with photographs documenting the well-liked American president. He was very well-liked. He was a very nice person, as well as Cuban employees enjoying themselves at company-sponsored events. The 1920s to the 1950s was a boom time for American economic growth in Cuba. During the Prohibition, Americans flocked to the casinos and lavish hotels of Havana. American tourism flourished, and United States corporations thrived. In 1942, Sears opened its first store in Havana. George Ken Murdoch worked for department stores in New York and New Jersey, and he ran his own chain of stores before joining Sears in Orlando, Florida in 1941. There he lived with a Cuban family to learn Spanish, becoming an assistant manager at the first Havana store in 1942, and then president and manager of the growing Havana unit in 1943. So this album was gifted to Ken Murdoch, the general manager and president of Sears, by his employees in 1953. It was a celebration of not only of him, but employees that had been there from the beginning, and it was a 10-year celebration. And the album is tailored for Mr. Murdoch. The thriving retail chain opened at least 7 stores by 1959, but it was nationalized by Fidel Castro on October 26, 1960. And here, this is Mr. Murdoch. Unfortunately, I do not know many of the people in the photographs because they were not labeled. So I want to share, when I was looking at, I don't know about you, but I particularly enjoy looking at photographs. It doesn't matter if I don't know the people or I don't know, I just love looking at photographs, and all photographs even better. So here's Mr. Murdoch, and I don't know who these two people are, but I enjoy looking at this phone and how shiny this glass, I'm assuming that's a glass surface on that desk, is super shiny. So here is a shot, this is from the store in Havana. And here's Mr. Murdoch. I unfortunately do not know the years because the album, they did not like mark dates or anything like that. But I like to see, I don't know if you can see really well in the photo what they were selling, what they were wearing. And here you can see cortinas para el baño, that means shower curtains for the bathroom. And here, articles for para la cocina, that means things for the kitchenware. Um, and here he's addressing his employees. And it was interesting to see a variety of men and women that they had as employees. And here he is. I think he's giving, because of many other photographs that I see, I think they were honoring employees. And I wish I could read what they were reading, but this looks like a certificate, so it may be Employee of the Month or something like that. But I love to see the fashions. This says first class, and I'm gonna have to investigate this because they won a trip to go, as you will see later, to go to Chicago, so this may be the people who won. But we will see that later on. This is the good thing about seeing things in a bigger screen. In a lot of the photographs, they had a lot of fun in these Cuba stores. I don't know if they did that in the United States, but they're always like eating and having like a lot of fun. And as you can see, very crowded, and everybody looks happy, and the food looks amazing. They're pinning something on him. I don't know what. So I love these photographs because it shows that he hands-on. They were cooking in the kitchen, and he's bringing food for them to eat. And one of the things that I gather is that Sears treated their employees, maybe not only in Cuba, but throughout, as family members. They became a family. And you can see that through these photographs. I wish I could tell you what they were celebrating, but again, the album, it doesn't show, it just shows photos. But pay attention to these outfits because this is part of a celebration that they had, and they're in costume because they were performing. Everybody's look at him. Christmas party, and you will see that they had a really, oops, sorry, I didn't see the water. They had a great time in this party. Really good. So I thought that this was amazing. Sears Glamour Follies. I don't know where this looks like it's outside, maybe beside the building, but this is a party for employees, and employees were performing. And here you can see the music. Must have been great music. Great outfits and performing, and they're having a lot of fun. As you can see, their faces and the people in the background, like the servers, they're having a lot of fun. It's beautiful. And here, I think that he just joined in this celebration because everybody was having so much fun. Look at this man, he's laughing, and over here, they're just having a great, great time. Christmas tree. Look at all these mannequins. Here's Mr. Murdoch. He's General Robert E. Wood, Sears president and CEO. He began his career in Sears in 1924. He became president in 1928 and chairman between 1939 and 1954. He was a retired Army general. He took Sears and made it the giant that it became. And he bought a small fleet of surplus DC-3 airplanes, and he used them to travel all across the nation and South America and all Sears destinations. And I love this photograph. Here he is. And one of the things that I learned working on this album is that generally, when he went to visit a store, it was something very fancy, and they had dinners. And if they went to different countries, it was like a state, a gala, where they had public officials, and it was a fancy event, formal. So here's Mr. Murdoch walking to receive. And the other thing is that he liked to travel with the executive, all the executives from Sears, so they travel as a group. And this is one of my favorite photos that I have ever seen ever. I love this photograph. Here's Sears. I wish I could tell you who this is. I do not know. And I'm trying to investigate this, but I haven't had the time to really get through it. To look at things, for example, old photographs naming all these executives, but I didn't have time to do it for here. And here is Miss General Lee, and here are all the executives that came with him on the plane. And there's more pouring down. Here's the one person that was shaking his hand on that amazing photo. Here's Mr. Murdoch and him. They were good friends. They liked each other a lot. Apparently, Mr. Murdoch was a very kind of quiet, but he was very well loved. He was a very nice man. And there they are with beauty queens. Here he is, and I love the expressions on their faces. It's just great. Like, I don't know where he's looking, but it's beautiful. Like, I have pictures of my mom had a dress that was similar to this, and women were so fancy. When I was getting ready today, I was like, there's no way I can ever do. I would not know how to begin, have no idea how to look like that. So General Wood in his office with the winners of the trip to Chicago. I'm going to show you later. The Noticiers newsletter is on a separate PDF. And this photo, you're going to see it there. But they had winners they had winners to go to Chicago from Cuba to meet headquarters and General Wood. And here's Mr. Murdoch. I noticed with him and looking at the photographs and selecting him, because some of them have so many people, I'm like, where is he? He must be there somewhere. And I found him. He was usually like trying to be a little bit behind, like hiding a little bit. So here he is, hiding behind everybody, right there. This is Mrs. Murdoch. Now, sometimes in archives, and Boyd can tell you more about this than me, but sometimes in archives in the past, women were not referred to by name. They would say, if they were appeared in newspapers and Mrs. something, Mrs. Robert Smith, I could not find her name anywhere. She's described as Mrs. Murdoch. And this is the first example that I personally find of this, that I work in a collection where I cannot find her name, and she's described just as Mrs. Murdoch. And I was like, there she is sitting on the left. This is Mabel Murdoch, the mother of Mr. Murdoch. Here he is hiding behind his wife. There's his wife. I do not know which store they're inaugurating, but it's one of the Sears stores. and she went to Cuba, so. And there he is with his wife. I do not know who they are. I think that these are executives, American executives visiting. This is a trip that he took to the Orlando, Florida store, and I found him in this photo, and here he is. Here he is. I'm like, and this is beautiful, and you can see the different, well, you can see the differences in the arrangement of I have some photographs that you can see the way that they set up a table in Cuba versus this one, but they're both very fancy. So this shows that Sears had as a company policy to have these employee dinners and celebrations. Um, this is a beautiful photo. It took me a minute to find him, believe it or not, but here he is, right here. And when you look at the photographs and you look at them over and over, you begin to recognize some people. Now, for this presentation, I didn't do all of the album, but I could provide some more photos if you want. Here's, they had as a habit, particularly in Cuba, to celebrate, give a blessing to the stores that they open. And again, I don't know which one of these stores is that they're blessing here, but I think this is a great photo. And oops, I don't know if I can zoom in here, but this, it says, "Thank you for visiting our store," in Spanish. The album contains scrapbooks and newspaper articles that so here, there they are, Mr. and Mrs. Murdoch, traveling in Canada, and here you can see an example, clear example of what I'm saying, that the women used to be described as Mrs. J.K. Murdoch. And these are my notes on how I documented the collection. So when someone wants to look, someone can go and ask for this particular photo, and this tells where they are. And here he is serving as a witness to an employee at her wedding. Beautiful photo, beautiful bride. And it shows how they lived. Thank you, that's it. Except that I can show you now the PDF with the Naughty Cuba. So, yes. So where? It's on the folder. Okay, wait, let me share it real quick. Mhm. Okay. Thank you very much. So this, if you're interested, and I wanted to ask Boyd, I can print these and recreate them and give them to you. If anyone speaks Spanish, like Ophelia, you speak and read Spanish. These are written in Spanish because these are pretty rare. They created these newsletters where they had news of events in the store. It was made by employees for employees. And I have to say something to Boyd. When I first saw this Naughty Sears name, I was really like impressed because I was like, that's very witty, because the word for news in Spanish is noticias. So I thought they took noticiers and noticias and made it their own. However, Boyd now knows I did a collection, another Cuban collection of photojournalist and cameraman from Cuba, very well known, who created a news company called Noti Cuba. So now I know that they did Noticiers because of Noti Cuba, I'm pretty sure. So, and that's a really an amazing collection. So this newsletter is fascinating because you can read about life, and it doesn't show life as a company. It shows life, day-to-day living, plus company news. But this shows how Cuba was in a way, because you can read through, even looking at photographs. Um, so here they're telling you the purpose of Noticiers, which is to be a newsletter to inform employees of what's going on with the company and with the employees, because they were a family. That's the name of a store. And here is 10 years. This is telling you, so maybe some of the photographs that we saw are from that party, but I cannot guarantee that. But this is the 10 years where Mr. Murdoch received his album. And they liked him so much that in here, they wrote poems for him and read it to him at the party. In here, they're talking about what Sears employees do, social events, advertising, and they call customers their majesties. For them, customers were the thing. So this is 7134. That was the name of that store. It's 2 years old by the time that they opened this. They published this. Cartoons. These ideas from a vendedor, salesman ideas, he writes in all of them. So giving tips on how to, sell. Here it says, todos los días son días de cortesía en Sears, which is for them, courtesy and respect for the customer was priority number 1. And here, benefits for employees. So this is still part of the first Noti volume, and this is the second one. At the end of each cover, this is the back cover of the pamphlet because they're folded, but they had photographs of children of employees, and they're beautiful, and cartoons. And here, history of Sears. So this bulletin is very informative. It says a lot of, it's a great source of information. And you can see someone did a puzzle telling how the store is doing in terms of sales. A Christmas event, more photos. This is a Christmas party that they had. It's not the one that we saw. They're different photos and different, but you have to read through see the people and see if they coincide. Here's another thing saying, let's not forget, every day is a day of courtesy at Sears. And then here's a report on how they were partying and having fun. It seems like they did that a lot. Here's Mr. Murdoch, right here. And here, that's Mrs. Murdoch. And here is another poem that they recited to Mr. Murdoch. So here's the back of the next volume. We have about 8 of them. and see the babies. And I'm looking at this woman because I don't think that's the same photo. It's not the same photo, so this is a different store, but we can compare and see if that's the same, but I don't think it is. But I think this is great, the second generation. Employee of the month. Here's selling that another store opened in Marianao in Cuba at the end of October of 1951. Here's, they're saying that they're opening another store in Santiago, Cuba. And that's 713-5. So that's what they call them, 7131. Santiago, Cuba was 7135. Here are photographs of that opening of that store. Here's Mr. Murdoch, and here, oh, so here is, that may be that photo that we have, a big photo from the PowerPoint, because the priest is, I would have to, like, we would have to compare, but chances are that that's probably what that is. See why this is so great? These pamphlets are really, and these pamphlets are not on OCLC as far as we know. We're the only ones that have them. Here's a photo that I presented at the PowerPoint of when General Wood was receiving the winners of the trip to Chicago. And there he is, and it's the exact same photo. And I love these twins. There's 1952. Robert. Oh, okay. Yeah, he's Robert E. Wood. Here is some bad news because it's saying that sales were going down a little bit in September, but that happens. Here they're talking about someone is getting married. He was an administrator in the Cuba store. And that's here's his mom featured in the brochure. Marianao store opening. And that's pretty much how they are. We have about 8 of them, and I would like to print them. And here's an interview that one of the employees they did with him because they just wanted to interview him. And if you're interested, I can give this to Boyd and bring them over, but that I can prepare them as, as something that you can read and share if you're interested in that. Right now, they're all displayed like this, and but they can be put together. So this is the only one that's in color because it's a Christmas one. And here's the same photograph that we saw in the PowerPoint presentation. They used it to publish in the front cover. Here he is. This is the album right here. So it's saying here that he's very proud and at the same time emotional at receiving the gift. The caption says, Mr. Murdoch, our very esteemed president, he shows us with a lot of pride the gift that we gave him to celebrate his 10 years in Cuba. The album contains employees' photos that started with him 10 years ago and in the Havana store. And there's more photographs on pages 4 and 5. So here are photographs from the party. We can see that these photographs are not on the PowerPoint that I did, so I'm not sure if they're exactly from that. I don't have this photograph on the album, or this one, or this one. So these are different. It may be the same party, but we don't have this on the album. This we do have, so. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Isn't that fascinating? What a treasure.
Any questions?
Here,
Yeah.
we have one here.
Barbara Francis.
Hi.
I worked in the Latin American collection in years 86, 87 with Rosa Mesa. And she was from Cuba, came over in 61. And I wonder what year you received this collection. Because she probably could have identified a lot of the people in the pictures.
Oh, that would have been great. They are from 1942 to 1952.
But when did you get the collection?
We got the collection last year,
Okay, see,
the
Because-
album.
she retired a long time ago.
Yeah.
She had the good Cuban things in the back room, and people would come in and they'd ask about some historic person, and, oh, yes, I knew him. I have letters from him and so forth.
That's great. That's good. That would have been great because I've,
Would have been a great collection to, to add to your collection, right?
yeah, that would have been great if someone knows them, because if she was from Havana, for example, I'm sure she went there and met them, and they came out in the news, they came out in social news in newspapers in Havana. So potentially she would have known some of these people. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think Boyd does. While the mic is making its way over there, I might have missed this, but was Ken Murdoch fluent in Spanish, and did he learn it for this job?
He learned it for the job. He had his own stores in New York, and then when he went to the Sears family, he lived with a Cuban family in Orlando, Florida, for several months so that he could learn Spanish, because that was necessary they wanted that, so that he could communicate in Spanish.
That was great, Martha. Just had a couple of comments. And you've probably already thought of this, but to identify a lot of these people, the newspaper databases with Cuban newspapers, or even American newspapers like newspapers.com, or even our resources at UF. It takes a long time, but I've found amazing things in identifying, because so many newspapers are so large, and they would, like, if a party or somebody, this event or this couple went there, and they may give the names of several people. It's just,
Yeah.
it just takes a long time to go through all those, but you might be able to identify quite a few of those people. I was also wondering, 'cause I don't know, but if there's a main archive for the Sears company.
There is, and I looked for Ken Murdoch, and he doesn't show. He doesn't appear. General Wood does, but not Ken Murdoch. And I'm like, why not? He's the one that I
Oh.
need. So you kind of beginning to know me. I've been only in UF only 1 year and a few months, but I don't like unanswered questions, and I'm gonna keep searching until I find at least Mrs. Murdoch's name.
Yeah.
I have to. I
Yeah.
need to find her name, so thanks for that
Yeah.
idea.
Probably marriage certificate, something like that.
Yeah,
I was also thinking, it'd be interesting if other stores had those types of newsletters.
I'm very interested in that
Yeah.
myself.
Um,
I have a feeling that it's particularly to Havana, but never assume, always confirm. I do not know the answer to that, but it's on my agenda to find the answer.
Okay.
Because when you archive, it's not, okay, I'm done with that. You gotta keep looking so that you can add things as you have time. But like Boyd says, it takes time, a lot of research. So I don't have all the answers, but if I find them, I'll come back and share them with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I might have missed this as well. You got this collection a year ago, but who presented the album to y'all?
Our Latin American and Caribbean curator, Dr. Margarita Vargas Betancourt, she's the curator. She buys the items for the collection, so she bought it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Ophelia here. No, I think this is fantastic for the collection to have all this documentation. And it is, I mean, it's a window into something that we would never have imagined have happened.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really important. I do want to make a historical note here. I'm Cuban, and so my parents went to Sears in Havana, and my parents like to shop the home section a lot, and and so I remember especially the newest store that they built, because they had earlier stores like the one that you mentioned in Marianao and some others. But what I wanted to mention was a historical note, and that was there was a coup d'etat in March of 1952
Mhm.
by Batista. And prior, and in the 40s, in 1940, Cuba has passed a very good constitution. It was a very progressive constitution, actually. And so all these happy people that you see, and some of them in the 40s, it made me nostalgic to, I mean, I don't, was it, anyway, so not that I was there, but for a period of time before, the tension that took place after 1952.
Mm.
And I was interested in how you said the newspaper ended in 1953 or so, the collection that you just showed.
Mhm.
What were the dates?
They go to 1953.
Till 1953.
Mhm.
I was interested in the drop of sales in September 1952. And I was wondering if there was some sort of economic effect that might be affecting.
Yes, that's a
The-
great question, and there is, and it's in the newsletter because I read them all. It's in the newsletter that Mr. Murdoch was able to recuperate really well from what happened in 1952. So it went up again, and he handled the situation very well. But then we know what happened. Between 1952 and 1959 was a very difficult period in Cuba at the same time. Companies were growing, but at the same time, there was civil unrest. So. Mhm. So I don't know, we can talk if they might like to see the Guayo PowerPoint, because that's another collection that I processed last year that shows, that one really shows how life in Cuba was before Fidel. Like, if you want to know that, you need to look at this collection, because it's about where they took Noticiers from. It's Noticuba. He was a camerographer and newspaperman and journalist, and he filmed Cuba and made documentaries of everything he saw since the 40s. So we have that collection. It's great. Yeah. I would be more than happy and more than happy to show you that. You would love it because it's a great compliment for this, as you were saying, Ophelia, because you can see how life was. Because when you look at a photo, a photo tells a lot, and it's hard to express it in words, but you can see it from the what they were wearing, even the costumes at the party. It shows cultural values and what they did and used. So we learn from that, at least I do. So with this one and the guayo, that would be a great compliment, and you would love to see that. And I can bring the brochures.
Thank you. Very, very interesting,
Oh, thank
the
you.
photos. But I noticed there was not a single black or brown person in any of the photos. And I wondered if there was a prohibition against, by Sears in hiring minorities.
I don't know about that. I doubt it. But no, I don't know about that. It's in Cuba. I very much don't think that that would have been a problem. But good observation. I can look through, there's more photos that this is only half of I didn't know how much time it would take. So I just did about 32, but there's more. So
Well, this was wonderful. The other thing that struck me was the company culture.
Mhm.
And I worked for Kodak in my career, and we had a culture similar to that. And I think that's something you just don't see today.
no, you
Um,
don't.
But that made working a joy. And you could see it in these people, how proud they were of their company and how much they loved each other. It's just a wonderful look at a culture that really doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's, yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was just a wonderful presentation. Next week, if you'll come back and join us, we're going to be looking at a collection of maps and charts that the UF Library has. And the title of the talk is Maps That Lie. I think it should be a lot of fun. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.